George, just give me a second.
If you're talking metaphorically, then please tell me what you actually mean by a second. Because if it's longer than a minute, I'll go and do something to occupy myself with.
Welcome to Haunting the Narrative. Today we have Lizzie, Meg, and me talking about
the timeline.
Stroud math.
November.
A bit of a contentious topic. We thought that it was worth doing an episode about the timeline because there's a lot of questions about it among the fandom, and it spawned quite a few debates.
Mostly among us, right?
Truly, a lot of it has been among the three of us, but I do see a lot of people questioning, how old is Lockwood? How old is Lucy? What time of the year does such and such event take place? That sort of thing. And so those are some of the many questions and topics we're going to get into today.
We're going to be starting with an overall macro look at the timeline in the books. And then we're going to be looking at ages. We'll be taking a little gander at the history. And then I think we're going to be getting into the nitty-gritty.
The argy-bargy?
That means something completely different. Okay, so let's go. So in the books, Lucy joins Lockwood and Co. in, we think it's about 2014. Where's this number come from?
Stroud has said that, I think, too.
That's when the first book was published, right?
Yeah, he said basically he imagined the books taking place like around the time he was writing and publishing them.
Now, the books did come out over 5 years, right? Whereas the books only take place over 2.5 years.
He did say in a recent interview that the first book actually took him 2.5 years to write.
I can see that.
So-
He had to figure out so much world building to write that first book, so that makes sense.
Yeah, and then have shop the idea around and things like that. Yeah. So yeah, as you said, the books are taking place over 2 years, right?
Yeah, so the
Yes.
Screaming Staircase starts, and then we get a flashback to 6 months earlier, which is when Lucy is hired. So you could sort of say that's 2.5 years from the time she's hired, but the books themselves take place over 2 years.
What are the ages that she is at the interview? I think she's 14, apparently. Is that it?
Yeah, that's what Stroud has said that at the interview. No, it's during the Screaming Staircase, she's 14. And Lockwood and George are 15 in the Screaming Staircase. So she could have, it's unclear in the books when Lucy's birthday is, but she could have been 13 during that flashback, but by the Screaming Staircase, she is definitely 14.
Which would put them at 16 and a half, 17 max, really, isn't it?
By the
Or
end.
TT. That's a bit scary thought, isn't it?
Well, if Lockwood and George are a year older, they could hypothetically be, well, they're like 17, I guess. Or about to turn 17 if they have fall birthdays. But yeah, that is a bit concerning.
It's funny, we get a lot of detail on sort of Lucy's history, right? She starts training the day she turns 8. And we know that
It's a week after, I think.
a week after she turns 8. And then she's
Yeah, her
promoted.
mum waits a whole week.
She's promoted double time, as she says. So every year, I assume she got a new grade because then she says on her 11th birthday, she gets her 3rd grade. And I actually take that to mean that it's typical in the problem universe for agents to be upgraded every 2 years. And so if she was 11 when she got her 3rd grade, and by the time she comes and has her interview, she was expecting to get her 4th grade really soon from Jacobs. So I can't imagine it's been more than about 2 years since then.
Yeah.
So 13 actually makes a lot of sense for the interview.
Ooh, 13.
Yeah.
I could see it. I don't want to see it, but I can see it.
And I mean, if you just say there's a random birthday, 50-50, she then turns 14 by the time you get to the Screaming Staircase. Although I love the idea that her birthday is in the winter, and so she has her birthday during the Black Winter. That's just a personal headcanon that I always try to squeeze in whenever I can.
I feel like everybody in this fandom thinks her birthday's about May.
That is
So in the show, it is. That's where that idea comes from.
There's some piece of paper.
Yeah, there's some piece of paper in the show that shows her birthday being, I'm trying to find the exact date. I think it's May 5th. So that's where the fandom idea has come from.
Yep.
Ah, okay, that makes more sense.
Yes, May 5th. I confirmed.
Hmm.
So, but if her birthday is May 5th, that means that she has like just turned 14 probably when the mill happens, when she leaves her hometown, when she comes to London, and when she does the interview, which is pretty brutal to think about,
No.
either way.
Yeah, she's young either way, like she's really young.
She's so young that she thinks of Kips as an old man. Kips, who is 20. He is 20 in the Screaming Staircase. He is 22 by the Empty Grave. And I'm actually really happy that that is consistent. That we actually have an age that's called out at the beginning and the end, and it's 2 years, and that's correct.
You say this like you expect it to be incorrect.
I expect it to be tricky anyway, like hard to figure out, but that one is just really solid.
I mean, she does say he must be about 20 at the beginning, which again, that's fairly good for Lucy. There are only two characters who are adults in this series that she actually says they look like young adults. One is Kits and the other is Rupert Gale.
Yeah, Gale's age confuses me in the book. I do not know
Ooh.
how old he is in the books. It's a little weird.
I picture him so much older than Kip's.
Hmm.
But I know that, as we've said, that might not necessarily be backed up by canon, but it's, I have a very different mental vision of him.
He's just got that like he feels like he's in his 40s but never got over high school. You know what I
He, yes,
Yeah.
he's very much that guy. Very
mean?
much that guy. I think it's, I mean, the carrying the rapier around as an adult doesn't help his case. It's very much like high school glory days
He
kind of
can, though.
guy.
He can see ghosts. He's able to see the Clapham Butcher Boy in the columns at Fitz. And then he's like,
Mm.
he's a little upset that Lucy clocked that he was able to see, and still has some talent. And it's unclear if that's because, I don't know, he's been drinking Marissa's Kool-Aid or if he's younger than he wants everyone to think he is.
See,
Yeah.
from his reaction to that, I'm pretty sure that he's older than he looks.
Yeah, and he's not
It's
supposed
very
to be able to
possible.
see, and he can. I think it's the eyeliner.
Yes.
He's wearing that guy liner. It gives him the
The
ability to
show
see.
eyeliner. I
Yeah.
do. I
He
love
doesn't
that
wear
costuming
eyeliner in
choice.
the books, though, does he? He's just got the really gaudy suits and stuff. Like he turns up in neon
Hmm.
green suits and things.
Hmm.
He doesn't, but it was frankly an inspired choice as far as I'm concerned for the
Yeah, the
show.
eyeliner shirt. Yeah. And the little man bun at the back.
Yeah, he
The
is.
other adult, and Holly actually, Lucy's opinion of Holly's age is always interesting to me because she says that she's 18, and apparently has big boobs. But the thing is that at 20, she clocks Kipps as 20 in TSS and says that he's old, his talent's like shriveling up, it's fading, it's basically all gone, he's useless essentially. And then Holly is 18, which is only 2 years younger, but also an adult. And the fact that she's a legal adult never comes up, and the fact that she must be nearing the end of her talent never comes up. She just never mentions it.
Yeah. I've actually thought that maybe like they're in Lucy's mind, right? Everyone who is
Mm.
between sort of 13, 14, they have the grade 4, and 19 when your talent starts to fade. Like that's just you are the important people in the world. Nobody else matters. Everyone older than you is useless. Everyone younger than you is stupid. You have to train them,
Mm.
whatever it is. So there's a very narrow range that Lucy is okay with.
Well, and I mean, it's pretty. I mean, while that's obviously pretty limiting on her part, it kind of makes sense given that the world she exists in, I mean, all she does is basically fight ghosts. And
Mm.
so, of course, the only people that are useful in that world are people that have been trained and that are still young enough to see ghosts. So, um,
And it makes
but
sense
it
that
is funny.
she doesn't trust people who are older after what happens with Jacobs and the mill and her mother. Like she's
Mm.
never had an adult who took care of her in any capacity, who cared for her and made sure she was safe.
Well, Jacobs did, didn't he? He was actually quite a
Briefly.
good supervisor at
Yeah.
first. And then after she turned 11, so what, by the time she had been with him 3, 4 years, he's just started falling off that wagon, didn't he?
Hmm.
And that seems to kind of be when she stops thinking about career progressions and stuff like that. I mean, we've talked about this before, but she has like no hopes for the future after the mill. Before then, she wants to be a team leader, and I guess she'd be on the supervisor path. But
Hmm.
after that, no, supervisors are useless.
Maybe we'll get into what happens to everyone post-canon, what we think their jobs and everything end up being. But yeah, she doesn't seem to have any, even more than Lockwood. Lockwood plans for the future. Lucy does not. Lucy lives very much in the moment.
But the supervisor thing is interesting to me because Kip's in TSS, he's 20. He's called a team lead, isn't he? Not a supervisor.
Mm.
And then by TCS, she says that he's successfully done like the agent to supervisor career path.
She also calls Jacobs the agent when she's
Yeah,
talking
his
about him, which
title
is
is
interesting.
Agent Jacobs. That's a very
Huh.
small town thing as well, though, isn't it?
Is it?
Yeah.
It
Well, I
is,
mean,
yeah. It's a very village thing.
that kind of, if he was like if people there had known him his entire life, that kind of makes sense to me too.
I mean,
Um,
agents are kind of like, they seem to be afforded a good deal of respect. Like Lucy says, oh, people get out of our way because they see us coming and they don't want to think about ghosts and stuff. But I think it's more they see the agents coming and they move aside out of respect.
Hmm. And
It's more
he does
likely.
carry a rapier.
Hmm. All
much
supervisors
like
carry rapiers.
Yeah.
much like our friend we were just discussing. So
But he's not a supervisor because
I know
supervisors are still agents, aren't they? They are allowed to carry rapiers and agents are allowed to carry rapiers. But I don't know what the hell Gale is. He's just walking about. Well,
he's Penelope Marissa's
Boy toy.
henchman.
no, he's gay. I'm sorry. His obsession with
Mm.
Lockwood is not normal.
Okay, that's maybe a question for a
Anyway, yeah,
future
that's a
episode.
different issue. It's just there is nothing straight about it. There's nothing healthy about it either. But there's
Well,
nothing
I
straight.
think that's undeniable that there's nothing healthy about it. But
Yeah. But I mean, the ages of supervisors is interesting to me, like I just said, because like Kip starts out quite young, but then you've got Jacobs, who I think had been at it like 30 years by the time he takes on Lucy.
20 years, I think, he says.
20 years-ish.
Yeah.
Been
But
at
that
it a
puts him
few
in his
decades.
40s.
Hmm. Farnaby was what? He was about mid-40s-ish, I think, as well.
I think that's correct. I just read that scene
Yeah.
fairly recently.
And I get the impression that Bunchurch actually works as a supervisor for his agents as well. He's only got, I think they mentioned it's like a 10-person agency as well, so it's small.
Mm.
Yeah,
But yeah, because he was
I was
walking
just gonna
back from a case at night, wasn't he?
Yeah, and at the beginning of The Hollow Boy, when Lucy and Lockwood go to Chelsea and Bunchurch is there, and Lockwood is so offended that Bunchurch has been invited and not him, it specifically says that, Bunchurch is, running around and, hoarding all of his agents and making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. So he's very active.
And I seem to remember
Hmm.
Barnes in the books is aged at around 50s, although Lucy readily admits that everyone over 30 is ancient and she can't tell the difference. But I seem to remember he's about 50.
Hmm. And she also says, doesn't she? She says that DPRAC operatives or DPRAC inspectors, whatever they are agents who are now so old that they're not even useful as supervisors.
Hmm.
So that would lend itself to Barnes being a bit older than he is in the show.
Their talents have
Yeah.
gone, and so have their knees.
Oh, there's probably something to that. Like
Mm.
being an agent and even a supervisor is a lot of physical work.
Yeah.
Like
Mm.
you got to be able to run really fast sometimes.
Yeah, Mairead's not here right now, but we had a whole discussion about how she thinks they're all going to end up with, basically sports injuries
Hmm.
in their 20s because they've spent their teens essentially being athletes.
Lockwood's had at least 3 concussions, right?
Oh God, yeah, at least.
I think I
Lucy
made
had
a
one.
joke in a fic once about how Lockwood needed to stop jumping out of windows because it was bad for his knees.
Mairead's got him with a knee injury in one of her fics as well in her post canon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, all right. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to move us over to Marissa.
Yeah, let's start talking about Marissa.
Yeah, so this is a little bit strange, the timeline for Marissa, and really the whole problem timeline in the books. So
Hmm.
Fitz is 50 years old in the book, same as it is in the show.
Mhm. Lucy was born in the fourth decade of the problem, so this kind of lines up as well. official decade of the problem. I think official's kind of important there.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it wasn't considered, there was probably, since it started slowly, it wasn't officially like proclaimed a like national emergency until a while after it had actually been going on.
Yeah, so if the problem really got going then in the 60s in the books,
Mm-hmm.
then Marissa must have been born in the 40s, probably the late 40s. And then
Mm.
if you start to try to plot out, like, okay, if she was born in the 40s and she established her agency in the 60s, and then she died in her 40s and took over the body of her, oh, spoilers. We've told everyone we're doing spoilers, right? So she took over the
Yes.
body of her granddaughter, who must have been no more than, I don't know, 5 or 6. And then shortly thereafter murdered her own daughter, Margaret. And I don't feel like we give her enough flack for that, that she basically murdered her daughter and her granddaughter.
I mean, hearing you recount it right now is pretty bleak, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. We also have no idea who Penelope or Margaret's fathers are. We can kind of maybe take a guess that Margaret's father was Tom Rotwell. Um, it's kind of the thing that makes
Mm.
the most sense. But Rotwell clearly then got married and has descendants. Um,
Mm. Well, I mean, does he?
yeah.
His wife's not mentioned either, is she?
No, but his grandson is running Rotwell.
Is that his grandson? I thought Steve was his son.
I'm pretty sure it's his grandson because I seem to remember there's a thing about Penelope and Steve. Holly says, because she worked for Steve, Holly says
Mm.
that he wants equal standing with Penelope because they're both descendants from the original founders, and he feels like Penelope doesn't give him the time of day. Which is fair because Penelope's really Marissa, and she's like, "You are the grandson of the guy that I used to run around with. You can, you can pound sand."
Yeah, go away, little boy. Yeah. But okay, wait. So if Marissa's born in the 40s, see, this is the thing. She must have been at least in her 20s when she started the agency then.
Hmm.
If Fitz is in the
Yeah.
60s.
Yep. And then she would have died in the 80s, late 80s, and Penelope would be around 40 at the time of the books, maybe a little bit younger.
Hmm.
Yeah, so this is the best I can figure. I kind of went back and forth for a while when I was reading the books of like, did this really start in the 70s? Did it really start in the 50s? But I think the 60s makes the most sense. And it's different in the show, obviously.
But hang on, Penelope would have been born in let's just say 2014. Wait, no. When is the book set again? Yeah, 2014, yeah?
Hmm.
So what, she was
Yes.
born in the 70s. Penelope would have been if she's in her 40s.
Yeah, so teenage pregnancies.
Yeah. 30
Lots of
years for
teenage
two
pregnancies.
generations. Yeah.
I mean, if Marissa died in her early 40s and Penelope was a child at the time, then you can kind of do that math.
Yeah. And that means that Margaret was around when Marissa opened up the agency as well.
Definitely a Rowell baby.
Quite likely.
Because
Quite
that's right when they
likely.
had their falling out.
Maybe that's why.
Hmm. No, I think they say very specifically why they have their falling out. And maybe we can talk about that in a future episode.
Is it? No, it's never mentioned.
They had intellectual differences.
Mhm.
Oh, that's all. Yeah, he doesn't want to keep murdering people or something like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like we've murdered enough
Most
people.
likely.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, before we get into the whole Marissa and Tom Rockwell, was it a match made in heaven or hell discussion? Let's stick with the theme of today's episode. So, you were talking about show timelines because the whole Fitz timeline is a little bit different in the show, isn't it? But we do actually have solid years for it.
Oh yeah. Do you want me to talk about the show timeline real quick?
Yes, bring that in because I'm sure a lot of the people listening actually love the show.
Yeah. So, all right. So Lucy joins Lockwood and Co. in 2023 in the show, which is when the show was released. And so, in the same vein as the books wanted to be like, this is just an alternate timeline to what's happening right now. The show did the same thing, which puts everything forward about 10 years. And then there are some dates that you can either see really clearly in the show or which you can infer. So Marissa, under her photograph on the back of the book, you can see that she lived from 1953 until 2007.
So she was older when she died in the show timeline.
Yeah, she would have
Yeah,
been
she's
54.
54.
Well, and that makes sense because we're no longer doing the granddaughter. Penelope is her daughter.
Yes.
It makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. And then
Mm.
Penelope specifically says that the Highgate Terror and Mud Lane Phantom cases, the first couple of cases that Marissa took on, are in 1971. She says that when she talks to Lucy at the ball.
Hmm.
And then because the Fitz at 50 ball, we know that Fitz was established in 1973 when Marissa was 20. And then Marissa died in 2007. Penelope assumes control of the agency. Lucy Carlyle, we can infer, is 16 during the show, which means that
Hmm.
Lucy Carlyle was also born in that same year that Marissa died, which I find lovely and poetic. And I don't know if that's why they chose that year, but it could be.
Marissa's talent leaves the world, so Lucy comes back with it.
Hmm.
Hmm. Sort of.
Something like that.
Mm.
But does it actually leave the world?
We can maybe post this timeline that I've roughed out on some of our social media if anybody's
I want to
interested.
point out that it says Lockwood is born, but you don't mention George.
No, that's
Well,
true.
show ages. I think this is maybe also when we should address that the show ages are different than they are in the books too. Everyone is so Barnes is younger, but Lucy is older, Lockwood is older, George is older. Kip stays the same age roughly, as far as we can
I
tell.
think he's a little bit younger.
I think he's more than 20. You think he's younger than 20? How?
He hasn't lost his talent yet, but I think he's
Yeah.
just a little bit younger, like 6 months younger. He's like just turning 20, just losing his
See, I
talent.
thought he's like 18, 19 in the show.
Interesting. I actually
Uh,
like that better because a 20-year-old or nearly 20-year-old asking out a 16-year-old has bothered me a little bit. So if he's 19, that's slightly better, closer to
I mean, he
18,
doesn't necessarily know that she's 16 as well. He might think she's 17 or something.
I suppose.
I think age must be really kind of murky for agents as well, because from the age, I mean, in the books, they start working at 7 or 8. That they Fitz trainees at 7. Lucy
Mm.
started working at 8. So it seems to depend on the agency, but they're working from 7 or 8. They're actually like in a professional role. They're expected to have CVs and sit properly and talk to clients and interview well, things that you would expect of adults. And from such a young age, they're given a lot of responsibility out in the field. So when you're 14-year-old, you're working with a 12-year-old who's got the same level of responsibility as you, or close to them, and has to act the same way that you do. I think, you'd start to kind of lose that, oh, 12 is just a baby, type of feeling.
right. I mean, they all grow up. They're all forced to grow up very quickly.
Yeah.
They're they're child soldiers. It's like a 16-year-old agent is in many ways much older than a 16-year-old who's just running around and going to high school as far as
Mm.
their life and their responsibilities are concerned.
Now, I do know that there was some magazine blurb for the show that said that Lockwood was 18, and I've just never bought that. I've always thought that he was 17, both because he's a year older than Lucy in the books and just because he's got such 17-year-old energy throughout the show.
Such 17-year-old energy. Like no
So
one
much.
has seemed as 17 as Lockwood, show Lockwood to
Yeah.
me.
I mean, he runs about saying, like, there's no adults. It's my agency. There's no adults. If that boy was the only 18-year-old in that house, he would be lording it over them all the
Mm,
time.
hmm.
That's very
Absolutely.
true.
Hmm.
That's very, very true. Um, Another, I think, big difference between the books and the show that we should mention is just that the book timeline is also just much more, I'm sorry, the show timeline is much more compressed.
Mm.
So, Lucy's interview until the end of The Whispering Skull is over a year in the books. It's like, I think, roughly 13 months or so. And in the show, it seems to happen much faster.
In the show, I think it's. Oh no, there is a time skip, isn't there?
It's a really small one.
Yeah, it's a couple of months or something.
No, I think
Mm.
Yeah,
it's a
it's like a
couple of
few
weeks.
weeks.
Is it?
Yeah. And for anyone who didn't catch it, because it took me many watchings of the show, and I think somebody actually had to point it out to me. The time skip
Yeah.
happens between when they get in the van at Coombe Carey Hall and when Lucy gets her fourth grade in the kitchen. and they're putting away the goggles. It feels like it's the next day because George is still futzing with the goggles, and Lockwood is still complaining about the case, and Deepret covering it all up. But apparently there was some time in there because he must have somehow gotten the fourth grade for Lucy and all that.
Oh.
Yeah.
Are you sure that's not just like Stroud math, but the show version?
It might be. Maybe it was 2 days
It's
later.
very likely.
It doesn't seem
Very
like it could be
likely.
2 months and they're still talking about it and George is still messing around with the goggles.
No, to me that it feels like it has to be like the same week. Like that seems reasonable to me, but whatever. It's not that huge of a deal.
Anyways, that's really short as opposed to the books, which has about 6 months between each book.
So let's start talking about the books in detail because this is kind of the fun thing. So, like you say, there's about 6 months between each book. Most of them take part either. Actually, no, we've got spring, winter, autumn, summer. We've got all 4 seasons in there, don't we?
We do. Which is really interesting. And I personally find the way that Stroud uses the seasons to really set the tone of the books to be really interesting. First off, in the Screaming Staircase, which takes place in November. We know that for sure. That's when we're first ushered into this kind of dark alternate world for the first time, just as like the world is getting dark and winter is coming. And then in The Whispering
Winter is
Skull, which is
coming.
set in, I know, I've actually never watched or read Game of Thrones, but that has infiltrated into my just like cultural knowledge. But in The Whispering Skull, which we know is set in June because of the timeline of the Fitz ball, it's summer, so Lucy is starting to feel more at home and happier. So things are literally getting warmer in her life. She is getting along better with George. And at the end, you kind of have the ultimate warming up, which is at the very end of that book where Lockwood opens the door to Jessica's room to them at the first time.
Oh, that is very
So he's literally
spring.
thawing out.
Yeah, that's lovely.
And then we have The Hollow Boy, which is we'll talk more about the timeline of it, but it at least starts in November. And to me, it is the epitome of November in a book. It is dark, it is gray, winter is approaching, conflict is growing, just like temperature is dropping.
Mm.
And then finally, The Creeping Shadow is set in the spring.
The
I think we
very
know that,
early spring as well.
yeah, like mid-March, I think we figured out roughly, probably based on the weather. But
No, she
you know,
says it is mid-March, yeah.
yeah. So Lucy has just lived through like the darkest winter of her life. All these agents have lived through the darkest winter of their lives in many ways. But she reunites with Lockwood and Co. Things start to get warmer, and the light kind of really starts to come back into the world as she comes back into their life.
Plus, she gets to have a really lovely springtime walk through the woods with Lockwood.
What I really like about that with the light coming back is that March is when the clocks go forward in England. So,
Right.
like right now, as we're recording this, I mean, this episode's not going to be released till December. We're actually recording this in November. The clocks have just gone back. So now in London, the sun's setting at 4:30 p.m., which is lovely and depressing.
It's very fitting for the Hollow Boy.
It is, yes. The darkness is coming, and it's just all of a sudden, okay, well, yes, it's definitely winter now. It's dark all the time. And March is when we start to get that light back, and the days get longer.
Oh gosh, and Lockwood is literally the light of her life. She talks all the time about how he brings warmth and light into a room, into her life, how she can't imagine a world without Lockwood. It would be like a world without light. So that's really poetic.
One of her very first descriptions of Lockwood is something about the brightness of his smile as well, isn't it? One of the very first ones where they're standing on the Hope's doorstep.
Mm.
Yeah, it's like his smile ignites, I think, is also something she says in that
Yes.
scene. It's so good.
Even during the interview, when she's like, I don't want to talk about the past, he just smiles at her and she's like, oh, the room already feels warmer.
I mean, I think that goes along well with kind of what happens in the empty grave, which, as we all know, is set in September. And
You say that like we all know. No, we don't. It's not
okay,
actually, it's not specifically mentioned in that one. We have to do the maths ourselves to figure it out.
I thought it was at some point.
No,
Whatever.
it's 5 months after TCS.
Okay, so it's set in September,
Hmm.
which at least in the US, many people think of as the other January because it's the
What?
start of the school year.
I
Have
thought
you
you
heard?
guys start in August.
Well, we do now.
Some American schools start in August, but if they have not started already, they start after Labor Day, which is like the very beginning of
Yeah.
September. So, and September is like full back to school mode, I would say.
Mm.
So it's like really but I really think about it as like the season of fresh starts and it's like new beginnings. And it's like when you start to like learn to let things go and autumn, so which I think it's very much transition time, which is I think true of the empty grave as well as so many
Ah.
doors are opened and closed and so many changes happen. So I
Mm.
am very into, I don't know if Stroud intended all of this, but I love the idea that he did and that he really used the settings and the timing to enhance the plot of what goes on in that particular book.
If he ever sits down and listens to this, I'm sure he's congratulating himself for his accidental genius there.
Which is great because we're about to be really mean when we talk about the Hollow Boy. So let's talk about the Hollow Boy.
Our apologies, Mr. Stroud. We're just going to say that in advance.
I am actually on Stroud's side for the Hollow Boy here, so it's me versus you two, apparently.
Do you have any indication from Stroud that Eichmer's did indeed happen in December? So let's first state the problem for everyone. Because here,
Okay, look, I have never asked him, but also I don't think he remembers at this point.
oh, I wouldn't either. Um,
Okay, Lizzie, why don't you summarize the problem of the
Hang on,
Hollow
wait.
Boy?
I think to summarize the problem, we first need to look at the other books because, like, the Screaming Staircase, how long does that take? It takes about a week or two?
Yes, I think it's 2 weeks. And then the Whispering Skull is also, I think, about 2 weeks. The Creeping
Hmm.
Shadow is also
less
about two
than two
weeks, and
weeks.
then
Yeah.
Yeah, the
yeah,
Creeping Shadow is like 8 days or something. It's exhausting.
that's true. And then the Empty Grave is also only just over a week. It's also really jam-packed.
Hmm.
Yeah, where's our pins for this? We have actually worked all of these out before.
I
Yeah, we
looked at
have
them
done.
earlier, and I think what we just summarized is about correct.
Is
They're
about
all
right.
very short, except for the Hollow Boy, which, as far as we can tell, given the time skips Lucy puts in, takes approximately 45 days, give or take.
Hmm. Give or take, it's about a month and a half, isn't it?
Yeah. And so the issue is because she says right at the beginning when they're at Lavender Lodge that it's November. So we have a start. It's the beginning of November during Lavender Lodge. And then if 45 days in the future is the middle of December. But there are two problems with the book ending in the middle of December. The first is that Harold Mailer in the following book specifically cites Aikmir's as having happened in November.
Harold Mailer is an idiot, so next problem.
Right? We don't trust anything he says, sure.
Right.
But Lucy is writing these books and she put it in there and then didn't call him out on it.
Hmm.
But she was also very depressed at the moment, so I don't think she
Yeah.
really wanted to
Also,
engage.
I kind of wonder, like, as somebody who does shift work herself, like, if I didn't have children, I'm not entirely sure I would know what month it is.
Well, this is a fair
That's
point because
valid.
one of the possible explanations is that Lucy just has no sense of how much time is passing during the Hollow Boy. But here's my
Mm.
other piece of evidence for why Aikmir's has to have happened in November, which is they go
Uh-huh.
into a department store and there
Yeah.
are no Christmas decorations. There are no Christmas carols. There is not one of those horrible earworms that I won't put into your head right now, playing over the speakers.
Uh,
There is instead this enormous tree that represents
Mm.
autumn. And it's, what's his name? The guy who owns Aikmir Brothers. It's his pride and joy. Now, you could maybe say that he was so stuck on this tree that he decided not to decorate for Christmas. And I know that maybe in the UK you don't decorate quite as early, but mid-December, there's no way a department store doesn't have Christmas decorations up.
I mean, I'm gonna be honest, I just went to the city, to the middle of London today, and Christmas lights are up.
exactly.
It's the 8th of
Exactly.
November. 8th of November, Christmas lights are up, which I need to kind of point out to anybody listening right now is that while we're talking on the 8th of November, the reason you're hearing this on December 14th is because that is Lucy's official resignation day, according to me.
According
Oh,
to
yes,
Kiki.
we have not addressed that.
Oh,
According
According
to
to the
me.
timeline that, yeah, she has mapped out.
Yes, because there's just not enough days in November for everything that's in the books.
yeah. So the possible explanations for all of this are one, Harold is wrong. Aikmir's is still dressed for autumn, and it ends in mid-December.
I mean, there is a Watsonian explanation for that, is that Aikmere's is not doing very well. It's quite a rundown department store. It doesn't have the money to do all the changeover for the seasons.
They spent so much money on that tree. They can't take it down. It's just going to be up for the
Exactly.
whole
They
year.
just keep it up year round.
Look, a tree that's red is kind of, it's kind of Christmassy. Just like a little bit of gold paint.
Is it?
You'd
I
have
don't
needed to
think
like
it
hang some
is.
holly on it. Another explanation we touched on is that Lucy is wrong. During the Hollow Boy, either Lavender Lodge took place during October, or she just doesn't have a really good sense of how much time is passing. There's some kind of weird inconsistencies of like she has a week off to go home. She comes home a day early, but then Lockwood says she was only gone 3 days.
No, she said she was only gone 3 days.
Yeah, she says when she comes back and she finds Holly in her chair and she yells at Lockwood, she's like, I was only gone for 3 days. So she says it in the heat of the moment too. So she could also be exaggerating.
I mean, in the exact same conversation, she also says it took you 6 months before you started calling me Lucy instead of Miss Carlyle. When you actually read the book, it took him 1 day.
So, I mean, and there's also the possibility there that Lockwood gave her a work week off, so 5 days instead of 7 days. But they don't seem to abide by normal, like 5 days on, 2 days off schedule. So that seems odd to me.
I actually just reread the beginning when she's talking about her training. They did 4 days on and 3 days off.
Yeah.
Hmm.
She worked 4 nights. She worked 4 nights a week, didn't she?
Hmm.
At Jacobs.
Mm.
And that
That's
wasn't even when
interesting.
she was training. That's when she was qualified.
But certainly by the Hollow Boy, they're working really hard. They're working every night of the week. So
Yeah.
Right, because that's why they don't have time to do the laundry. And that's why the pile of George's laundry falls on top of Lucy at the beginning, which is it's just an excellent scene.
all right, so third Watsonian explanation is that November is 60 days in Problem Britain. October, they just didn't want to do Halloween anymore. It's too much. And so they've extended November. It's taken over all of October. And so that's why you can fit all of the Hollow Boy into November. This actually, I think, dovetails nicely with my actual Doylist explanation, which is I actually think Stroud intended the entire book to take place in November, and he didn't do a very good job of just keeping track of how much time had passed and not realizing that it had been 45 days since the beginning of the book. So I think in his heart, he has stretched November to be 60 days.
Okay, hang on. Let me have a quick count of this because people don't notice. We obviously notice because we're staring at the timeline here, but how we have these figures and these dates is because we've literally gone through the Hollow Boy page by page and noted down any mention of time. So every time Lucy's saying next few days, it's obviously 2 to 3 days. She'll say within days. At one point, she says a week's passed, and I think there is mention of Lavender Lodge being on the 1st, but it could also be the 2nd. But it's quite possible that the next few days and all of that weren't supposed to be that. I don't know. Let's have a count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
I'm in the middle of the Hollow Boy reread right now because I'm writing a fic that very closely follows the timeline as best I can sort it out. And it does seem like the everything I've gotten through, at least I've been literally underlining every mention of time that has passed. It does seem like it is supposed to cover this long amount of time because especially later on, once we get past the middle of the book, there's and right before the carnival, Lucy says like at least a week has passed. So there's multiple times where a couple of weeks have passed. Lockwood says at one point that Lucy has known Holly then for a couple of weeks. Like it covers a lot of time in one way or another.
Yeah, like you said, there's a lot that happens, and a lot of those times were like within days, over this week, things like that. A lot of the relationship dynamics are shifting with each one. So it's like all settling into like a new normal each time, and then the story picks up again.
Mm. Like Holly needs lots of time to annoy Lucy, and George needs lots of time to do his research, and Lockwood needs lots of time to ruminate on Chelsea and how the agency is doing. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Well, and there's a lot of there's more conflict in this book than any other one. And it takes time for that conflict to brew to like erupt the way it does at Acmere's. Like if they had only known each other for a week at that point, it wouldn't have felt as warranted. The like total meltdown
Absolutely.
that Lucy has.
Hmm.
I mean, they have only known each other for a month.
A month's a long time when you're a teenager.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
No, I agree. The pacing actually of the book and of what happens in that book is really good and very compelling. And you would not ever notice this if you weren't one of us three going back through the book trying to figure out exactly what date things happened on, either because you're writing a fic or because you're trying to write a script adaptation of the book. So we are a special kind of nitpicky, and apologies to Mr. Stroud. The book is lovely and
Yeah.
we love it so much.
We love it so much that we're like, in my case, reading and annotating like every page too, so I can accurately translate it into a different setting for a fic and on the correct days of the year. So
Hmm.
that's a compliment.
So, yes, okay. So the timeline, yeah, okay. Look, Ikemere's obviously had their autumn decorations up still for Christmas. But on the subject of Christmas, there is also the Christmas fic that came out. Well, we call it the Christmas fic, and we call it the Christmas fic for a reason. But I suppose technically it's not fic because it was written by the author himself.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yes.
last Christmas in 2023, Stroud published a little story on his social media, like a little like bonus Christmas story. But I think, and everyone was thrilled by it, and I found it delightful personally, but I feel like we all immediately had a meltdown over the timeline of it because it doesn't make sense
Uh,
given the timeline of the books, because it is obviously Christmas, but
mm.
Kips is around
Mhm.
and Skull is there, and Skull
Yep.
is still in his jar. Kips joins everyone, just as a reminder. He hooks up with Lockwood and Co. in like either late March or early April at the latest. And
Mm.
then the empty grave, when Skull gets broken out of his jar, happens in September. Christmas does not take place during those months at all.
Mhm.
So it seems like it's almost existing in an alternate universe where Christmas kind of fits in that time gap between the creeping shadow and the empty grave, because the vibe very much feels like a missing scene from that time, I think also as well.
Yeah, I agree too.
But um yeah, so I don't know if Stroud just was like, I just want the gang to get back together. I don't, he probably didn't think about it that much. And I mean, I don't blame him, but the fandom did have a little bit of a meltdown about it.
Christmas in July.
That's the thing in Australia, you know.
I do know.
But it was snowing. I really like that there was phantasm outside on Portland Row as well. That's just a little tidbit from it that I thought was cool.
You know, there's another
I love the
possibility, which is that it's post-canon and Skull did manage to come back and they've stuck him back in his jar for Christmas because he was misbehaving.
it's possible.
I
It
suppose it
is
would have to be a
possible.
new jar. They broke the old one and then it blew up.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how possible that is, to be honest.
All right, then it really is just an alternate timeline. There's no.
Yeah, I think it's, but come on, look, if you were going to revisit a story that you wrote, you finished writing like, ooh, about 8 years ago or something like that. You finished writing it 8 years ago. You've never really tinkered with it since, apart from like when people did an adaptation. If you were going to write a story for the other people who love your story, wouldn't you just go, yeah, I like this part of it. This was the most fun part of it to
Hmm.
write. These were my favorite dynamics. I'm just going to go with that.
Yes, absolutely. And I love the gap between the creeping shadow and the empty grave. It's one of my favorite gaps to write fic in, so
Hot
I would set
Agent
it there
Summer.
too. And I love Christmas fics, so you put these together. Hot Agent
It's
Christmas.
perfect. Well, I mean, and he doesn't really have a very, the only other, like the Christmas the year before that, Lucy's off on her, solo
Yeah,
adventuring.
leave that one for the fic riders.
Yeah, that one was probably super depressing. And the Christmas before that, Holly wasn't around yet. Kips wasn't around yet. Skull wasn't even really around yet.
Yeah,
Like
he wasn't really talking.
Yeah.
So he's not even talking to them then.
yeah. So if he wanted to set I keep saying Christmas fic. If he wants to set a Christmas story during canon, he can't like get the whole gang there unless he kind of messes
Yeah.
around with the
Nudges it.
timeline. So I don't blame him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was going to say at no point does it say that September in TEG happens actually in the same year as TCS, but no, actually it does say that, so never mind.
Yeah, it's 5 months.
Yeah, we know it's only been like 5 months or whatever.
Yeah. Maybe there was a one missing.
Well, he has right in the book that Lucy says time concertinas for her. And she's talking about trying to tell the ages of people over 30, but I think maybe that's just true for both of them.
I mean, oh, yeah. I've done night shifts before, and time just starts to become meaningless.
Yeah. It all goes wibbly wobbly, as they say.
Mm. So, and on that note, I think this is where we're going to stop talking about wibbly wobbly, timey wimey things.
This was wonderful.
Yes.
Let's do this again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not this. Let's talk about something else next time.
So, yeah, thank you everybody for your time. I believe we've got some social media. You probably already have the links somewhere. If not, you've got better things to do than listen to us repeat them. So never mind. Go look for them yourself if you're interested.
But if you have any burning questions about anything we've mentioned today or anything else, we would love to hear from you. You can email us at hauntingthenarrativepod@gmail.com. And you can find our website at hauntingthenarrative.wixsite.com/podcast. And you can find us on Tumblr at Haunting the Narrative Pod and on X at HTN Podcast.